it seems crazy if you're on the outside of this and you don't understand what's actually going on. But when you spend a little bit of time to actually understand what's going on, what their incentives are, it makes complete and total sense. And so if you're in a position where you are purchasing or contracting IT services or technology in any sense of the word, you need to understand the incentives of the vendor, and what you're up against as a buyer. I saw this post on LinkedIn the other day, and I saved it because I wanted to respond to it, but I wanted to do it in a way that wasn't just commenting on the thread. And there's a few things going on with this post, and the first one is just a reflection on the state of layoffs in the tech industry and the SaaS industry. And in this case, why is Eric at Zoom getting a pass for laying off a ton of people, when others didn't? And the second part of it is talking about their sales motion, and really what this person's writing about is their frustration over sales tactics that Zoom was employing. So, a few things. Let's talk about sales tactics. Let's talk about Zoom sales tactics in particular. Zoom is a very popular meeting application. At this point, everybody knows what Zoom meetings are. But Zoom meetings is one piece of a larger bundle of collaboration product. And when we talk about unified communications and collaboration today, really that bundle is meetings, it's voice, it's video, it's phone, it's chat, it's messaging, it's shared work. There's a bunch of things that fit into that bundle. So while Zoom is an extremely popular meeting application, it is not, how do I want to put this? Zoom needs a moat. And in this case, adding voice or adding chat or adding these other things that comprise the Zoom One bundle really creates a moat that protects Zoom's core business. So while Zoom Phone and Zoom One is absolutely incremental revenue for Zoom, the goal and the design of selling, Zoom Phone and Zoom One is as much about creating a moat and protecting their core business from the competition as it is about incremental revenue. So think about how you look at what Zoom's trying to accomplish here with Zoom One and Zoom Phone a little differently. Yes, they want the incremental revenue, and yes, the margin on that incremental revenue is great. But the value to Zoom in selling that additional license is greater for protecting their core business in Zoom meetings than it is in the actual incremental revenue, of that license. Okay. Giving it away, in most cases, discounting by over 50% against the competition. So they were actually, literally giving it away. The sales motion was incredibly aggressive. And if you pushed it a little bit, you could get in just unbelievable concessions. Now, the real issue with their sales motion was that they had, weak sellers, and really just junior people in their AE teams that had not experienced a world. So the world changed. Okay, 2021, world changed. 2021, the world changed. 2022, the world changed. 2023, the world has changed again. So when you have a sales team that comes up in any of those environments, what they're pushed to do and what their incentive to do and what their expectations are changes also as well. So again, Zoom was incentivizing their sales teams to sign bundled product licenses by any means necessary because, again, the moat is valuable to Zoom. It protects their core business. So now, if you're interacting with a Zoom seller and this was 2022 and you get on a conversation with them and you're saying we're interested in Zoom Phone or we want to look at it and demo it and think about it and we're considering it, what was happening too much was those sellers were in the first conversation, the first sentence out of their mouth was saying we'll give you X, and that X was massive discounting and free service and all these different crazy things that made absolutely no sense because they were unnecessary for that stage of the sales cycle. They were they were, you know, just leeching revenue unnecessarily. Now, again, that was the behavior that was desired because Zoom wanted the moat around the service. Now, the second thing we should talk about a little bit is the actual costs and the margins and the way this business gets made up. So, in any sort of SaaS application, we'll just line this up here because it's easier. You have your average sales price. So you can look at this at like, what's the monthly subscription? What's the average contract value? What's the annual recurring revenue? So let's just use ARR. So annual recurring revenue. And then you have, your second big one is what your customer lifetime value is. So if you sign a company up, let's just use a seat. If you sign a seat up, if you have one user on Zoom and that user has a, ARR of $240 and their CLV, the average length that they're going to be a customer is, I don't know, what's Zoom CLV? Let's just say we'll do something that's simple. We'll do 4 years. So in this case, you've got about $1,000 worth of potential. You have $1,000 of value, $960 worth of value from that seat. When you are in control of your stack, in this case, Zoom is, they have costs to deliver the service, but they're not paying licensing to a third party. They're not paying somebody else to use any of the stack. So their effective incremental margin per seat is very high. So when you say, okay, if you're gonna bring on a seat and that seat's worth $1,000 to you, what is the acquisition cost of that seat worth it to you? And what you're doing when you factor in what this acquisition cost is you're just eating into your margin. So what's an appropriate acquisition cost and $1,000? Okay, well, let's just assume some other things. What do we think their gross margin is? Their gross margin is huge, right? So the Vonage proved this 20 years ago. You can afford to have an incredibly high acquisition cost if you have a long CLV and you have good margins in the business. And Zoom has both of these things. So now if you are giving away, in this case, let's just say your acquisition cost is half, right? That's not great. But if you spent $480 to acquire $960 of the revenue, and that $960 worth of revenue had a 90% margin, that's good math for you. It's not great math, but it's good math for you. And that's at a 50% acquisition cost. If you take that acquisition cost and you discount it, you say, okay, we're going to give you a year of free service. We're going to give you $240 worth of free service. That acquisition cost against the actual CLV and against the margin of that business is, it's like no brainer. And then when you take a step back and you say, well, the reason why you're doing this in the first place is to defend your moat. So in the case of Zoom Phone, at an average seat cost of like $10, if you give somebody $100 worth of free service, and that $100 of free service is protecting $1,000 worth of customer value with margin, it's a really easy lever to pull. And that acquisition cost of $100 is minuscule when you look at the actual alternative acquisition costs that a company has to go through. And this is marketing and sales, and it's a relatively cheap way to acquire the customer, and the CAC is not outsized against what the actual ARR and CLV is for that type of customer. So now, again, 2023, the world has changed again. We've moved from 0% interest rates to inflation, rising interest rates, cost of money is increasing, risk-free rate of returns are changing. Right now today, you can get a savings account at a 4% return annualized. So the evaluation and the calculus that goes into how money gets allocated changes pretty significantly. And this is why all these companies have had to change their approach and what they're looking at. So Zoom has done the same thing. Their layoff percentage-wise, hopefully they don't have to do another one. That's my position on this. They scaled up very fast to deal with the pandemic and the response to COVID, and now they're being judged based on what their revenue per head count is, what the actual, what is their actual free cash flow? What's the revenue per employee? and how do they increase and improve the actual core metrics of the business. And for most companies, you can look at this from a lot of different ways. It's like, can you address your underlying cost of service and what you're spending and what your core costs of goods sold are, or can you make another shift? In this case, layoffs are expensive, but they're a very fast way for a company to influence their financials. And that's what Zoom has done. So, giving it away, discounting by 50% against the competition. I mean, it seems crazy if you're on the outside of this and you don't understand what's actually going on. But when you spend a little bit of time to actually understand what's going on, what their incentives are, it makes complete and total sense. And so if you're in a position where you are purchasing or contracting IT services or technology in any sense of the word, you need to understand the incentives of the vendor, and what you're up against as a buyer. So, the simplest way of looking at this is, people think about, public companies and their quarters. Where is the vendor at in their cycle? Are they getting close to the end of the quarter? Well, what happens close to the end of the quarter? All of a sudden, discounting comes out like crazy because they will do anything to increase the revenue and their contracts. And that's because the sales team is incentivized. This is where it gets into, and also the company has to report that number. The company gets incentivized. So you've got quarterly closes and you've got annual. End of year, great time to go out and contract. Right, really simple incentive structure that you can take advantage of. And anybody that understood what Zoom's incentive structure here was, got a fantastic bargain for them if they're out acquiring these services. And these aren't bad things. I'm not putting this in the position of this being a bad thing. I'm just saying, understand the incentive structure of the people that you're working with, and you can understand a lot about what they're going through, what is valuable to them. And then based on that, what's important and valuable to you, and you can put yourself in a really strong position as a buyer to actually do something and get the best value you can for yourself and your business.